everybody. Welcome to TraderMerlin Show. It is your Tuesday edition, a special Tuesday today. It's guest week. It's almost like Shark Week on Discovery Channel. We're gonna have guest week, where I think pretty much every day this week I'm gonna have a guest. Maybe not Thursday or Friday. So I guess we'll do a 60% guest week for TraderMerlin Show. Yesterday we had Corey Land on the program talking about options, zero date expiration, some shorter term to swing trading aspects of options world. Today we're going to do something a little bit different and step back and look at the bigger picture. We are going to talk about tax-free now, tax-free later. My guest joining us from the East Coast today, we've got Mr. Justin Krebs joining us. Justin, how you doing, my friend?
Good, Merlin. Is my hair okay?
Your hair's perfect. Spectacular.
Got it.
You know, I feel bad because I've been using this AI generator to create graphics for the show. And what I've done is I've taken someone's picture and I run it through the AI thing and I say, render it as a cartoon or animated. And some of them have been absolutely great. Corey's yesterday was awesome. I ran yours through for probably about an hour today, and I was like, I can't do them dirty like that. The AI kept making your ears huge, and it gave you these gigantic teeth. And I even wrote in like small. I'm like, why is it making him have big teeth? I don't get AI anyway, but I'll send those to you for yourself. You can keep those on your own. So you don't get an animated picture today. Maybe in the near future, if I can get a good one for you.
Well, I mean, God's chosen to bless me with some really good looks, so AI can't really do much else about it. So
there you go. It doesn't know what to do with true beauty. Let's take a step back and look at the bigger picture, which is obviously looking at the retirement planning and I guess long-term investments. So you and I have talked about some alternative investments, and then some of the questions that have come in from the viewers have revolved around retirement planning. So I've got two questions here. Let me bring those up so my viewers can read them on screen as well. First one comes from, we'll read them both and then we'll just tackle them individually. Gene says, could you do a show about retirement taxes? I'm about 5.5 years away from retirement and would like to keep as much money as possible. And then the second one here is going to be, what's the best thing for a retiree to do with their money in a recession, from Alice. Those are the only two questions I got for today. So I will let you start tackling those one by one. Maybe talk about retirement taxes. I think that's probably the biggest challenge for most people, is understanding the tax side of things.
Yeah. So, I mean, I work with, my practice primarily is geared towards people that are close to retirement or in retirement. And as such, I've actually seen a lot of folks mistakenly do things the wrong way. Not because they were dumb or just, bad advice. It's just, we're conditioned to think a certain way about things like taxes and investments and things of that nature. So what is true is that the old saying is that, hey, you know what, you want to put money into these tax deferred accounts because, well, you're going to be in a lower tax bracket when you're retired, right? We're retired. And that was true for, say, the baby boomers' parents, right? The fact of the matter is taxes have been coming down since World War II. I mean, that's the actual fact and statistics. The problem is that we're now in a situation where the country's in a worse debt situation than it even was in World War II. So taxes are going to go up. It's already written into law in 2026 that we're going to revert back to 2017 tax brackets, effectively eliminating the or sunsetting the Trump tax cuts, I should say. So what happens is that the baby boomers primarily have just stuffed away money. They've done a good job saving, and they've stuffed money away in these tax deferred accounts. And what's wrong with that situation? Well, I know you've bought a house, right?
Yep.
So if you went into the bank and you said, hey, what's the rate on this mortgage? And they said, hey, don't worry about it. We'll let you know in 20 years.
I'm not buying.
You're not buying, right? Well, that's the same thing when we put money in that tax deferred account. We know what the tax rates are now. It's just a matter of, okay, so 20 years from now you're gonna take that money out, and now you're gonna pay the taxes on a situation in which you don't know what the tax rates are going to be, and most likely going to be higher because of the debt situation. And most likely you're not going to really diminish your spending, or want to diminish your spending, because now you got grandkids. I think the profession of the baby boomer generation is pretty much watching the grandkids. I mean, that's what everybody that I work with does. Hey, what are you doing today? I'm watching the grandkids.
Yep.
So really, I thought the show today might be good if we could just talk about maybe how do we not get into that situation, or if you've gotten into that situation, what can we do about it? So, in other words, be proactive about our retirement.
Ooh, nice tie in there. I love it. So clever, Justin.
I know. I mean, not only good looks,
That's right. He's clever.
but
God,
cleverness.
you know what? You do one more thing right, you're gonna have the trifecta. Well, then they'll be lining you're already married, but you'll have more wives lined up waiting.
So here's one of the things. One of the things before we get into, I think, the tax side of things is that little bit of planning, right? Because ultimately, what I do most, I tell my clients all the time, look, I mean, there's anybody down the road that, they work for Merrill Lynch, that, Fidelity, they can give you hot stock tips. I can do just the same. But where I think is important in anybody that works with you is important is the planning aspect of it. So let's first do a little bit of planning. I really do suggest for most folks out there, if you haven't done so already, create a living trust. There's ways to do it. I have services in which I work with that they do it rather inexpensively. Of course, if it's a straightforward living trust, if you kind of know what you want, it's not complex. You don't have a lot of moving parts or whatever that may be. But a living trust does a lot of really good things. So, for example, just recently, a client that I started working with, they came to me, they had about $3 million of assets, and they had a bunch of real estate. And I asked them what they wanted to do with that real estate. And they're like, well, we want to give it to the kids. And they said, we already have one kid, we already have a house that we kind of jointly own with the one kid. And I said, okay, so the goal is you want to leave the houses to the kids. And I imagine reduce the amount of taxation on it, right? Like, yeah. And you want it to transition easily. Yeah. And you already own a house with the kids. And he's like, yeah. I'm like, well, what you need to do is you need to set up a trust, a living trust. Now, I'm not an estate lawyer, but I do understand, how these mechanics work, right? So the reason for the trust is because, number one, if you're sitting here, if you're out there listening right now and you're thinking to yourself, I'm working, I've got kids that are in their 20s, or 30s, and, they're getting married, they're having kids, and I want to leave, I have some real estate properties or other investments that I want to leave. Well, the simplest, most direct way to do that is in a living trust. And the benefits of that go several fold. So, for example, in this guy's situation, one of the things is that the real estate that he leaves behind, well, he'll be able to leave it at a step up basis. So in other words, let's say he paid $500,000 for the property, and today it's worth $1 million. Well, if he were to die without a trust and just that passes along to the kids, well, the kids now inherit it at his cost basis, which is $500,000, and now they got to pay the capital gains on that 500 to $1 million, right?
Right.
Well, if it's in a trust, then what happens is that when the guy dies, it passes along to his kids, but at the trust cost basis, that is now $1 million, the market price, because the trust can get an appraisal, right? Mm-hmm. So what now happens is the kids inherit the same property. Nothing changes in that situation. It's just they're not going to be paying the capital gains on it like they were, or very little capital gains like they were, previously. And that's just one of the benefits that you have in a trust situation like that.
Let me chime in here just a sec. So I am not a lawyer. I'm not an estate planning expert either, or I like estate planning expert. However, I've seen one of the big differences. We are taught to have a will, right? Write your will down, have a will in place, and that should settle your estate. And I've seen more problems happen because people just have a simple will. If you have a will, it still has to go through probate. So you have to hire an attorney, you got to go through this expensive legal process. And I've spoke to some friends recently where they got a lawyer, and the lawyer dragged their feet, as a lawyer will do, knowing that he's paid hourly, and didn't settle the estate for over a year and just kept dragging on. And a large percentage of the estate disappeared because of fees and cost of the lawyer. With a trust, you're still going through a lawyer, but it's just to draft the documents and get things set up, and you don't have to deal with all on the back end. The other side of it is, with that will, there's still a lot of, well, maybe this goes here and maybe this goes there. Things can be fudged with the trust. Things are much more clear cut. And I've also noticed, I don't know if anybody that's watching right now resonates with this story, but you might have family or friends who come from a family with a lot of siblings. And when the patriarchy dies, and the assets get distributed, there's all kinds of squabbling, fighting, and in some cases, it literally destroys the family dynamic. Brothers don't talk to sisters because someone stole this money to something here. I think trusts make it much easier and clear cut and laid out, so it's irrefutable where things go. Sorry, I had to chime in there because I've seen the will thing destroy families.
Yeah, and you're 100% right, because you know this. I think you've been through this, right?
Yeah.
So it's simple. If you have a will, what happens is that the will, you have to assign an executor. The executor's job is to take inventory of assets, basically find deeds. I mean, think about it. For those of you listening right now that have kids and have a will, do you think your kids know where the heck your deeds are to your properties, to your house, all that kind of stuff? I mean, that's what the executor has to do. The executor has to inventory the assets, get the deeds, all that kind of stuff. And then they have to pay the bills, because now they got to get a clean slate on the estate, right?
Mm-hmm.
After they get a clean slate, then involves the courts, right? The courts come in, the lawyers come in, right? Then the transfer of assets happens. But basically that process can take usually about a year, 6 months to a year, and it usually costs about 3 to 5% of the estate. So if the gentleman that I just talked to, his estate's $3 million, I'm like, think about it, 5% on that estate, $150,000 of cost, and the kids won't get pretty much anything for about a year. Like, that's not a situation that you probably want. A trust basically absolves that, because you can set up a trust. You can set up a trust to give them a lump sum. You can set up a trust to give them, to dictate that you want it set up over the course of 5 years, 10 years. Maybe the kids are young, maybe they're in trouble, they've been in trouble, stuff like that. You can set trust up to dictate those terms that make it much more clear and absolves you from having to go through all that pain in the butt probate, right?
It sucks because you don't want to think about it. You don't want to think about, okay, I'm going to die, then this happens, right? And, look, in the case of something like Bob Dunn, Bob Dunn was 70, I think 71. He didn't plan on going. I literally talked to him days before. He sounded fine. Everything was great. You never know when your ticket's going to get punched. So it's funny, just talking to Justin before this show, I actually have been working on setting up mine. I would say working very loosely. I'm like the 10% mark of having everything all set up. But I will probably have a trust set up here very shortly, simply because, I don't know. I mean, who knows? Could catch the next COVID or the next pandemic thing and die from that. And I want all my ducks to be in a row, because as Justin mentioned, if a lawyer comes in and tries to find all my crypto accounts, ain't gonna happen. Yeah. There's stuff that's gonna disappear forever because no one will find it. I gotta tell them where those skeletons are buried.
Well, I mean, so really, if you're really out there, if you have, I would say anyone that has over 500, let's say the minimum maybe 500,000 of assets, it is certainly worth you considering setting up a living trust. I mean, especially if you have kids, you want to leave anything behind. I mean, and it causes, by the way, it benefits you in other ways than just simply taxation to the kids and stuff of that nature. But that's kind of where I figured I'd start, starting to form the planning aspect of things is, hey, look, you don't want to think about it, but you know what? Do you really want your family to have to worry about that after you pass? I mean, they've already lost you. Do you want them spending all this time going, oh, crap, where's this? What's that? And arguing with each other? Right. I doubt that's going to be the case. So a little bit of planning actually goes a long way in that respect. So now let's talk about taxes.
The tax,
right?
Yeah.
So the number one thing that I tell people when you're preparing for retirement or something like that is let's stop feeding the beast. So if you're under this impression that taxes are going to go up, which 100% I believe, and I believe they're going to go up considerably over the next decade or so, let's stop feeding the beast. So what do I mean by that? If you're contributing to tax deferred accounts, let's start to pull back the reins. I'm not saying don't contribute to tax deferred accounts, but what I am saying is that if you're really worried about taxation, then stop digging a bigger hole by keep feeding those accounts bigger and bigger. And I know some people out there are going to be like, yeah, but I get a tax deduction. Well, so what? You are literally in your prime of tax deductions. You have kids, you have a mortgage payment, you have a 401k deductions, you have an earned income. You don't want to get in a situation where you contribute all this money at that time, maxed all your deductions, then you're retired, have no income, have no deductions. Now you got to pull that money and now it's 100% taxed at a rate at which is probably going to be higher, because I don't think that you're going to stop those visits to the restaurant, or so you're going to stop vacationing once you are freshly retired. Maybe when you're 85, yeah, but not when you first retire. So the first thing is stop feeding the beast. So how do we do that? Well, there's three buckets, and you're well aware of all these, I'm sure, Merlin. You got your taxable bucket. Okay, so you got your taxable bucket, your tax deferred bucket, your tax free bucket. Okay, so taxable bucket, it's not the most useful bucket on planet. So the taxable bucket are your accounts like your 1099 accounts, your savings accounts, your checking accounts, your trust accounts, if you have them, maybe your option trading accounts, futures trading accounts, crypto accounts. Anything that gets a 1099 at the end of the year is a taxable account. Doesn't have any real benefit by having the money in there. It's taxed every year on the capital gains aspect of it, and really has no long-term tax benefit either, and is completely subject to tax laws now and in the future. Anything that changes, it's subject to, right? So, but you should have a taxable bucket, because the best thing about a taxable bucket is it's liquid, right? And there's, you can do something with it. So I always suggest for folks, other than what you have as a trading account, because obviously if you're trying to make a go at this and trying to earn an income off of trading, whatever it is, options or futures or whatever that may be, you probably need a taxable account to have an income from it. But other than that, I suggest 6 to 9 months of living expenses in some sort of savings or money market account. So in other words, to give you an example, if you have $5,000 of expenses per month, you probably should have $30,000 to $45,000 in a money market or saving, an easily accessible, safe account, because you don't know, hey, you might lose your job, you might have, the roof cave in and need a immediate, flush of cash, something of that nature, right?
Yep.
So taxable bucket, okay? Anything above and beyond 6 to 9 months worth of liquid capital, you should be finding other uses for it, other return, other, other tax, situations like tax-free bucket. Okay.
Did you say 3 to 6 or 6 to 9 months? I'm making a graphic.
Sorry, 6 to 9 months. Did I mess that up?
No, I'm actually typing out a graphic. I'm going to try to build out as you're talking.
I mean, but would you want me to make like PowerPoint slides? And
No. I just, I like to give as much information as possible, and sometimes visuals really help. So I'm just typing as you're going along. Okay.
So that brings us to the tax deferred account. So the tax deferred account, for those of you out there, I'm sure you're familiar with it, but you got 401ks, IRAs, 457s, 403s, all those kind of good type of accounts right there. So there's a benefit. There's two benefits to a tax deferred account. One, you get a tax deduction that year for putting money into it. So you put $750 or $7,500 into a IRA, you get a tax deduction or tax reduction off of that money when you file your taxes. The other good thing is obviously it grows without being taxed, so you don't have to stop and pay the tax man every year in that. The bad news is you gotta take the taxes out when you pull the money out. So tax deferred doesn't mean tax forgiven. It means when you pull that money out, you are in a situation where you have to pay 100% of taxes. And even if you're saying to yourself, I'm good, I've got a pension, I got Social Security, I'm not going to need to touch my 401k. Yes, you will. Mm-hmm. The IRS will make you. Right now, they changed the date to when you're 73. But when you turn 73, the IRS is going to make you take around 4% of that account out, and that's 100% taxable. So the consequence of that is simple. You already have an income. You have to pull more income, and now you find yourself in a tax situation which gets worse and worse and worse every single year, especially if you grow your accounts with any sort of regularity, 4, 5, 6%, right? But it's even worse when you're a couple and one of you dies. Because when one of you dies, the other is left with all the assets, still tax deferred, still required to take the required minimum distribution out, and now you're filing single. So you have less of a deduction, and you've just vaulted into another tax bracket.
As I'm typing this out here, I'm looking at the taxable accounts, tax deferred, and then tax free. So most of us have a 401k or an IRA. Where does that discussion of traditional versus a Roth come in? Because obviously tax deferred, you are looking at a traditional IRA, whereas I'm not paying taxes today, but at the end I'll pull it out. Where
Right.
if I'm in a Roth IRA, even though it's a 401k, which kind of falls in that umbrella of a tax deferred vehicle, I'm paying the taxes today, but I get all the tax free benefits when I finally pull it out. How does is that the tax free side here, or would you put that in the tax deferred?
So I'm not sure what you're asking there on that.
Well, if you have, they're kind of separate the way that they defer the taxes, right? The traditional IRA is going to defer up front. I'm not going to
Oh yeah.
pay taxes
Okay.
up on my income now, but I pay the full on my income when I take it out during retirement. Whereas a Roth, I'm paying taxes today, but I'm going to get
Yeah.
all the withdrawals tax free. And it's like, okay, what are those both deemed tax deferred, and should we treat them the same?
Got it. Got it. So the Roth is completely separate. Even though it's a Roth IRA or a Roth 401k, that's a separate. That's the tax free bucket, not the tax deferred bucket. So the traditional IRA, the 401k, you get a tax benefit for putting the money in, but all the money coming out, whenever, say you're retired, whenever you pull it out, you're going to be paying taxes
Right.
on that, right?
Yep.
Now, the Roth, however, if you now go to the tax-free bucket, the Roth, you have no tax benefit for putting the money into the Roth at this point. Now you can put taxable money into it, right? You can put tax deferred money into it if you're over 59 and a half. You just do the conversion, but there's really no tax benefit for doing that now. The tax benefit is now all that money is free to grow, tax free, and all the distributions are tax free, and you're immune from any tax law changes because you already paid the tax on it, right?
Right. Yep.
So I tell people, and we'll finish kind of this thought of this, but I always tell people when you're comparing these buckets, you gotta look at it like this: you're going to pay taxes on that money. It's your choice whether you want to take control of it now. The tax rates, you can create a plan. You have favorable tax brackets. You have historically favorable tax brackets right now. You can choose to take control of that situation, or you can leave it go and then be forced to pay taxes at some unknown rate, and probably a situation in which you're more vulnerable. You're in your middle retirement. You have a fixed income. You're not putting any more money away, and now you've got to take those distributions. Maybe you're single at that point as well. You're putting yourself in a more vulnerable position for an unknown situation, right?
Right.
And there's very few. There's only about 5% of the folks that I've worked with that actually would benefit from not doing something like a Roth conversion. Only 5%. That means 95% of the folks that I work with would benefit tremendously from it because you're going to pay the taxes on it. It's just a choice of how you want to do so, right?
Yep.
So the thing about the tax deferred bucket, if we could go back to that, I would just say this: look, there's benefits to doing the tax deferred bucket, but I tell people that are under 59 and a half right now. And why 59 and a half? Because 59 and a half is the magic number where you can now, without penalty, convert as much of your tax deferred money into a tax-free bucket. 59 and a half is that cutoff, that threshold. Okay. There are in some cases with employer sponsored plans, so you could do it at 55, but we're trying to avoid that 10% penalty, right? If we can. But here's the thing: if you're below 59 and a half and you have a job, you have a 401k, and let's say the employer matches, perfect. Here's your strategy: put the money into the 401k up until you get the match. Because who wants to turn down? People call it free money, but I'm like, hey,
You're earning it.
beholden to that employer, right?
Right. Yeah.
You're earning it, right? But you get that match because that's doubling your money for that, for that dollar for dollar. What you need to do that. But after that point, why keep feeding the tax deferred beast? Don't do it, right? So here's the thing: cut yourself off at that point, right? And then the remaining amount of money that you would put towards your retirement, let's put it into the tax-free buckets. Okay. So folks under 59 and a half that I work with, this is typically the structure: taxable account, have enough liquid for 6 to 9 months, and then contribute in your tax deferred up to the point where you get matched. And then the remaining contribution, we're going to shift into the tax free bucket, which we're now going to talk about.
Okay. Like it.
Okay. So now tax-free bucket. Okay. So the tax-free bucket, like we were talking about earlier, there's no real benefit of putting in now. You're taking the taxes on it. You're shedding that that liability, because people mistakenly think it's always about the amount of taxes that you pay. That's just one benefit, right? It's also the tax liability. If you've paid taxes on something, you don't have the liability if the IRS decides to raise the tax or change the tax brackets, or Congress decides to put in new laws that tax this money or tax that money. It doesn't matter. You've already paid money on those. You already paid the tax on that money. You already paid the tax man. So the tax-free bucket doesn't have the liability, doesn't have the risks, doesn't have, any of that. In addition to all the growth and distributions are tax-free in that situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do we get money in the tax-free bucket? There's 3 ways, and everybody that's listening can do it. Do I hear them now? No, I can't. My accountant told me I can't contribute to a Roth. I can't. Everybody that's listening can put money into a tax-free vehicle.
Unless you live outside the United States. Some of you might be foreigners and we don't know international tax law, but for right now, this is just going to be U.S. centric.
Yeah. Hey, folks over in Dubai, sorry, different situation.
Well, everything's tax-free over there anyway, so you win no matter what.
Yeah. So here's the thing. There's 3 ways. One, you can contribute. So the contributions are, if you're earning an income, you have to have an earned income. You can contribute. I think this year it changed to $6,500 into a Roth IRA. You can choose a regular IRA or a Roth IRA, right? But if you can contribute $6,500 into a Roth IRA, I believe that's the contribution limit this year. They just changed it from last year. Now, if you're over 50, you can put another 1,000 into it. So 7,500 is the limit for somebody over 50 that you can contribute to a Roth. If your income is below a certain threshold, once you start to get into that like 120, 130 tax bracket, you're not really able to contribute to Roth. So people tell you that you can't contribute to a Roth because your income is too high, right? So below a certain threshold of income, you can contribute. That's number 1. Number 2, you find that your income is a little bit too much. You can't get money into a Roth. Okay, well, you can. It's called a backdoor Roth. And don't giggle. It's a way to put money into a Roth that it's completely legal. It's just the way you have to. This way you have to do it. So for the high earners, what you would do is you would set up a traditional IRA, an IRA, right? And you would make a $7,500 if you're over 50. $7,500 non-deductible contribution, because even if you're a high earner, you still can't contribute to the IRA, right? So it's considered non-deductible. You can't write it off on your taxes. So you take the $7,500, put it into the IRA, wait 1 day, transfer it over into a Roth. That's a backdoor Roth.
There are fees associated with that, I'm assuming?
Nope.
Wow.
No, it's just a straight transfer, right? So it's a direct rollover in that way. So you're just literally rolling it from a tax deferred account to a tax-free bucket. You're paying the taxes on it again, right? But you're shifting it over into it's the backdoor way of doing it. Now, the backdoor way of doing it is you can even do it. It's called a mega backdoor. You can even do it with Roth 401ks, believe it or not. But they're trying to Congress trying to close that loophole. They consider it a loophole. They've been trying to close it for a couple years now. And if they're successful, then that will limit that opportunity to do that.
Well, get it while it's hot.
Get it while it's hot. Now, the exception that we've talked about on the show as well is if you're a high earner, or even if you're not a high earner, there's a second tax-free bucket, which I think is actually a better way to go in a lot of people's cases, right? I think having a balance of both of these buckets are important, but there's what's called basically investment structured life insurance, right? So this type of life insurance, it's not, I know people just turned off the show, life insurance. It's not like that, right? We're using life insurance as an asset. So most people use life insurance as a cost. Hey, how much death benefit can I get for the little amount of premium? Well, that's the problem. the most expensive part of a life insurance policy is the death benefit, right? So if you maximize this and put your cash in, all of that cash is going to be gone to the death benefit, and you've lost it. That's a term policy. Then some people go, well, I want to make sure that I have this for the rest of my life. Well, all the insurance company does is they lower the death benefit a little bit, but they extend it for the rest of your life. It's the same basic cost. But what's happening is that they charge you a higher premium for that. And all they do is this: they take 90-some percent of that premium to pay for the death benefit, which is an expense. And you get a little bit of money that becomes a cash value that's growing at like 1%, 2% IRR. Who cares, right? So eventually what happens is that cash value reaches the death benefit by age 100. That's the goal of a whole life. So it's not really an investment. It's still mostly an expense, to cover yourself for life. Now, what if you just did the opposite, right? Now, so why would you use life insurance as an investment?
Because you can grow it tax-free.
It's tax-free, right? And there's no limitations like there is on a Roth, right? So what if we did this? What if we got rid of, and this is why a lot of insurance agents won't do this, right? What if we just got rid of, what if we minimize the death benefit? That gets rid of agents, commissions and stuff like that. Wouldn't you just reduce the death benefit? Now you've got the least amount of death benefit according to the IRS for the money that you put in. So guess what? The cash is now free to do. Grow, yep. Right? And we're talking like good, healthy growth, like IRRs of 5%, 6%, 7%, 8%, right? So you just shift the script, right? You've lowered the death benefit because who cares about the life insurance? Now you can use the life insurance in these policies for other benefits like long-term care and stuff of that nature, but you're not concerned about the death benefit. You're concerned about having a protected asset that you can put as much as you want into tax-free.
Right. And
you could use taxable money, or you can convert tax-deferred money. It doesn't matter in a life insurance policy. Okay. So the folks that I have, and I do have a few of these clients where they make a lot of money. They've maxed out other ways to try to save for retirement. And they're like, hey, I've still got this money that I want to put away and I want it to be tax-free. Where can I go? This is how we structure those policies. And you're not paying for us or your life. You're just structuring these policies usually for between 5 and 10 years is the kind of the optimal way to do it, right? So basically what happens is I have a high earner. I'll say contribute up to your match. So maybe they have to pay in $10,000 to get their match. Okay. So $10,000 to get their match into a 401k. And then the remaining, say 16,000 that they want to contribute, we take and we put into that, like that structured life insurance policy. And what happens is that they can do that all that they want, right? And they just do that for 5 years or 7 years or 10 years. And it's just another tax-free bucket that they have. That's kind of immune to all the other issues that even Roths have.
I like it. Here's what I got so far on the graphic. So under the taxable side, you mentioned, trading accounts. That's your more active stuff. Not really much you can do there. Maybe you start trading things that give you a little tax treatment, like trading futures products, so you get the 1256 benefits there. Then you move to tax deferred, which says really anything that's going to be above 6 to 9 months. You got your IRAs in there, 401ks, and I agree. And there's two sides to this one actually. For those of you who have a 401k and your employer does not offer a match, then you might want to consider not actually contributing to that 401k because you're going to be put in a fund that's going to charge you management fees, there's organization fees, there's mutual fund fees, there's all these different plan fees, 12B1 fees. So you might actually take a bit of a hit there with regards to investing if you are not getting the match. Now, if you get matching of any percentage, Justin mentioned a 1-to-1, some employers do 25% match or 50. If you get matching, take it, right? And max out what that number is. And just don't put yourself in a situation where you're so stressed financially that you can't pay your bills, right? It should be money that you can afford to invest. Now, once you max that out, then the question is, what do you do with the rest of that money? The question came in here several times about high earner. High earner in 2022 was $144,000 per year. In 2023, they've bumped it up to $153,000 per year. Once you go above that number, it's hard, not impossible, as Justin just explained, to get into a Roth IRA or those, call it tax-free accounts. So max out your 401k. Then the tax-free side, contribute to a Roth if you can, right? If you're making above those amounts, he just talked to you about this, using a backdoor Roth and how to potentially do that, or structured investment structured life insurance, which will give you less of a death benefit and more, I guess, active growth of the funds in that account that ultimately could be tax-free for you. So quick run through of our graphic here, which is not the prettiest graphic, but I'm working on it.
Yeah, perfect. And so that's a great summary. So a couple points on that. So one, 401k. So those of you out there that work for a large employer, which is by definition 500 or more employees, chances are, and the chances are 80, it's like 88% or 85%, I forget the exact number, somewhere like 85, 88% of large employers actually offer a Roth 401k version. The problem is that less than 8% of employees know about it, and less than 1% actually take advantage of it. So if you're sitting here going, I have a 401k, I work for a large employer, I want to contribute to a tax-free bucket, go to your HR department,
Right.
Say, do we have a Roth 401k option? And most likely they do if they're a large employer. And if they do, you just structure it. And I've done this so many times too. All you do is structure it to go, because a lot of times the plan will say you have to contribute to the regular 401k, X amount, and then we contribute the rest of it. To get the match, you have to contribute to the 401k, and then the rest you can contribute to the Roth. You can structure it with your HR department and simply as that, right? Mm-hmm. Now, what I also am a big advocate of is that to me, it's not either or on the Roth and the insurance. To me, it's both, right? Because they both have their advantages, right? So what I would end just recently with a client of mine, this is what we're doing. We're contributing to his 401k up to a certain amount. Then we're going to do a backdoor Roth for both him and his spouse. And then we're doing an IUL, life insurance. It's structured life insurance, right? And that's the plan for the tax-free bucket, right? So, because that's the way that you can do it before 59 and a half. Right. But then the third way, after you're over 59 and a half, is easy. That's the conversions. So after 59 and a half, you can simply take any amount of money that you want out of your tax deferred money, and you pay the taxes on it and just simply convert it into a Roth or any other, insurance or anything like that you have at your disposal, right?
Real quick. There was a question that came through. I think I can answer this one. Someone asked about I-bonds. What do you think about I-bonds? Yes, you can only do $10,000 per year per person. And if you have a market environment where rates are going down, so let's look at 2009, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. I-bonds not the way to go. They're absolutely not the way to go because their inflation is super low. But if you have a rising inflationary environment like we are currently, and actually it's declining now, I-bonds have been great. Of course, they reset twice a year, so I would say it's a nice augmentation to your portfolio, but remember, you can only do $10,000 into those ones. Are you a fan of I-bonds?
I am. Obviously in a rising interest rate environment. And by the way, you can also I believe you can also put in an additional $5,000 if you elect to put your federal tax refund into it. So you can put up to $15,000 per person if you elect to do like your federal refund.
This is a good question, and I'm not sure I know the answer on this one. I think I do, but let's say I've been putting in a Roth IRA. I'm in my 20s or 30s. I was making $30,000, $40,000, $50,000. I know long-term Roth's the way to go. I'm loading up my Roth, and all of a sudden, I get a nice raise. I get a promotion. I'm making $160,000, and I don't qualify. Just because your Roth is open, it doesn't mean you can contribute to it anymore, right? You have to now go into traditional IRA because you are exceeding the income limits for Roth. So even though that money's in there, it can stay there, but you just can't contribute new money. Is that correct?
The only way that they can do that is by the backdoor method.
Okay. So I was correct. You cannot put it in once you exceed that income threshold, but if you dip back down, certainly you could contribute to it again. Because I'm in this situation. It's funny. I actually have Roth and traditional IRAs, and they're at the same brokerage firm. And if my income should fall below a certain threshold, I'll go back to the traditional and start loading, or go back to the Roth and start loading that one up again. But right now it's just traditional.
Yeah, they'll penalize you if you have a certain income above the income threshold and you contribute to the Roth.
Nice.
Yeah.
Let's see. We got the salary contribution limits covered. I'm currently maxing out my 401k because I turned 50 and maxing out catch up. Should I continue catch up or convert it to a Roth?
I mean, again, these are great questions, but the real problem is that it's like this. It's like maybe a lot of like other advisors or brokers out there will answer that question as like general advice, but I don't. And it's because I feel more of a responsibility. I'm like a doctor, right? If you walk in and say, "Hey, I have this cough. Should I take this medicine?" Well, I'm not just going to go, "Hey, cool." I'll take your word for it. No, let's ignore all the other all the other aspects and symptoms of your body. Let's just diagnose that. No, taxes aren't in a vacuum. Just like trading isn't in a vacuum, right? Taxes aren't in a vacuum either. So my answer to that would be, in general, I would say that the more that you can stop feeding the beast to the tax deferred situation and feed more of the tax free bucket, generally speaking, that would be a better situation for most people. But maybe you fall into a situation in which maybe you have very little money saved, and maybe you're making a lot of money right now. And when you retire in 10 years or 15 years, maybe you actually will be in a lower tax bracket. Maybe you'll fall in that 5%. So it's hard to answer that question without knowing the whole situation. But I would say, again, go with that 3-bucket method, right? Taxable 6 to 9 months, tax deferred up to the tax benefits that you get or the match that you get. And then the rest goes in the tax-free bucket, whether it's, both a Roth and, insurance, if you can afford to do that.
Pepe says, so it's funny, Pepe. I don't think you're correct on this. And I don't think Justin is anti-traditional IRA. I think what he's saying is if you have the both lined up side by side, the Roth IRA is a better go because you're paying the taxes now, getting that out of the way, and then as long as you assume that you're going to grow that bucket, that Roth IRA, at a nice rate of return and use compounding to your side, Roth IRA is hands down the way to go. When I was in college, I'm dating myself here, but I think it was 1997 or 1996, I was taking Excel class at college. And my project was I took the Roth IRA and the traditional IRA and I ran out the spreadsheet to calculate out all the rate of return for whatever time frame you wanted. And under only like 2 or 3 situations did it come out where the traditional IRA earned you more. And so Roth just seems like the better way to go. Pay a little bit of taxes on your income now, and then when you pull it out, you can have all that money in one lump sum. If you have a traditional IRA with $1 million in it and you retire and you take it all out, you're going to be paying highest tax bracket possible. If you retire with a Roth IRA with $1 million, no taxes on it. Take it out, party, do whatever you want with it.
Pepe, I hate. No, I'm kidding. No, it's you got to, Pepe. You got to look at everything. So look at the world of trading. I think Pepe's from OTA, right?
Yep.
So, and I think I remember him. So think of it like the trading world, right? Is options better than futures? Is futures better than Forex? Is Forex better than stocks? Is stocks better than options? Like we play this stupid roulette game or not roulette game, but like this pick 'em and choose 'em game. Or like, yeah, this is better than. They're tools. They're investments, right? They all have their pros and cons. Same thing with the tax world. The tax world has its pros and cons. The IRA, traditional one, has its pros and its cons. The Roth has its pros and its cons. Different types of accounts have their purposes. What you need to figure out or work with somebody to figure out is, how do I plan my life in my situation to minimize the impact of taxes, to grow my money as much as I possibly can, to give me as much liquidity as possible, right? I don't approach this, and I know Merlin appreciates this about me because that's why I think Merlin has me on, rather than I'm not the traditional advisor in the sense that I'm just going to tell you to stuff your money into this investment because that's what pays me. Yep. You got to look at the whole picture of somebody's situation and go, hey, you know what? In this case, a Roth would be really a good situation for you. or in this case, now the insurance would be a better situation for it. Actually, in this case, neither of those would be a good situation. You should contribute to your 401k more heavily. It's the whole picture that you have to have going on.
Yeah, and I do. That is one thing I really appreciate because I think everybody's story is different. You use a doctor analogy earlier. There's maybe a medication that is supposed to be prescribed for a specific ailment, but a really good doctor will look at that individual and say, you know what, you have this and this, so this prescription, I'm not going to give that to you, which is the standard. But you need something. Maybe you should try this because this could impact these other factors here. And I think that's a good doctor, and I think a good financial advisor is going to look at that as well. As there is no cookie cutter approach. And Justin and I have had this conversation in the past where my disdain for the financial company I worked for was because they did exactly what you just talked about. They were just like, oh, hey, come on in the door. We're getting paid a ton of money to push you into these investments. We get kickbacks from the fund family. So we don't really care what your stuff looks like. We're just going to funnel you into these investments. And I was like, this is not for me. This is wrong. You shouldn't be doing that. Everybody's got to be their own tailored situation. And there's different income needs. There's different, healthcare needs. And I think that was another question here is how do you factor in for long-term healthcare? Well, number one is you need to save up a little bit more than you thought because long-term healthcare is extremely expensive, but there are different products you can buy to help out with that situation if you do know that you have some, maybe pre-existing medical conditions or more family history of medical conditions. So tailor it to yourself. I think it's important to find someone to work with that you resonate with and you realize that they're in your best interest, not in theirs.
And by the way, to that note, if you work with somebody that actually understands those type of life insurance policies that I'm talking about, the investment structured ones, those are structured to have living benefits, like long-term care benefits. So in other words, instead of using the death benefit when you die, you can actually use it while you're living for long-term care and stuff of that nature, without having to get really expensive long-term care insurance, which I'm not a fan of at all because it's super expensive and it's chances are you're not going to use the full extent of a policy like that. So
that's why insurance companies make money, man. Insurance typically is never claimed. I look at, and I'm gonna get in a car crash tonight because of this statement, but never been in a car accident. I've never filed an insurance claim for myself. It's like I've been paying insurance since I could legally drive, and it's like, wait a minute, I use thousands and thousands of dollars. I've never filed a home insurance claim. I hope my house doesn't burn down today because I said that. But insurance companies prosper because they're doing the statistics, and the majority of people never going to file a claim. And some freak accident could happen, and sure, we'll file it. But you have other people that abuse the system, that's for sure. But I love insurance.
Everything is abused in that way.
I think. It is. Everything can be abused. Everything. Yeah. You could look at religion. You can look at politics. You can look at healthcare. You look at foods. I mean, I just read an article that Toblerone has been saying that they're Swiss made, but because they're made in over 100 different countries now, it can't call themselves Swiss made. Is that abuse? I don't know. Big Eb says something good here, and I want to make sure I get to read your comment, Big Eb. He says, you want to have both buckets, taxable and non-taxable, so you can stay under certain tax brackets annually. And it's a great point. I totally agree with you on that one. I think there's two people that you really need to kind of work with. If you're doing everything yourself, then you really need to have a good understanding of tax law. I have a CPA. I work with my CPA, and I ask him all these questions. Hey, if I do this and this, how does that tip this scale, and what do I need to stay under for that? Using that with a financial planner or financial advisor is a great thing. And to just keep yourselves, I guess, maintaining or keeping as much of your tax dollars as humanly possible without, pulling a Wesley Snipes and going to prison for tax evasion. You don't want to be doing anything like that, and don't do anything illegal. But there are so many little loophole almost sounds bad, like you're doing something devious. It's not a loophole. It's in the tax code. So if there's things in the tax code that you can do, take advantage of them. It's just a lot of people don't know what's in there.
Right.
Justin, let's see. I've got your website up here, The Proactive Investor. Do you got any? I think last time, didn't you say you were going to do some events or some classes or something like that? No.
I mean, I just do local events and stuff like that. So
you should get some online. You should do some. Is it? Do you prefer to have local so you can kind of see people face to face? I mean, you should do some online ones, man.
No, I mean, honestly, I've been thinking about doing the online ones, but it's just 5 kids will kill you, and so. I don't really have the time. So I'm busy during the week with my clients and stuff of that nature. So the weekends come along and I'm just going to soccer games, dance competitions, track meets, I don't have, I want to put something together, but it's just not having the time at the moment. But
maybe next time, hey, there you go. Next show we'll do is going to be how to plan for your 5 kids' college funds using investment vehicles. Huh? I think that would be a good one. I mean, I know you're the type of guy that like the day that you left the hospital with a newborn, you're like, okay, here's your first $100 deposit into your 403b or whatever account it's going to be.
I opened accounts for them and I bought a bunch of stocks.
Long term, go for the long haul.
I mean, hey, that makes sense. As a trader, 20, 30 years from now, you can't tell me that money's not going to be a heck of a lot more valuable.
True. I mean, market timing is a factor there. But yes, if you're dollar cost averaging over time, you'll probably do well. That's what DCA works. Yeah. All right, Justin, anything else you want to add in here before we take off? We went long today. It's good. Good content.
I know, it's good. We got into it, man.
We did. I love it. I love the tax side of things. Hey, keep as much money in your pockets and keep it away from Uncle Sam if you can. Just don't do it illegally. Guys, if you want to know more information, I got the website up here. I will actually copy and paste it into your chat. If you want to reach out to Justin and ask him more about what he has to offer or any of these other products or just further continue on this discussion, you go to theproactiveinvestor.com, which is now in the chat there. So, Justin, thank you so much for coming on the program today. I appreciate it. We'll see you next month.
All right, buddy. We'll see you, man.
Take care.
Bye.
All right. I didn't realize we were, I looked at the clock. I was like, holy cow, we're getting right near the end of the show. So hopefully you enjoyed that, learned something from Justin there. And Alice, we didn't really get to your question. I apologize. So what's the best thing for a retiree to do with their money in a recession? I would say go to as safe of an investment as possible, especially in a market environment like we have right now, which based off what Jerome Powell said today, I don't know if you guys saw it, but boy, the probability of a 50 basis point rate hike surged today. And you might remember about 3 weeks ago, I was saying, look, you're starting to see this tick up a little bit. It feels like this is going to start to become a higher probability. So let me show you here real quick what that ultimately turned out to be. I changed all my bookmarks, tried to clean up house here a little bit. But let's look at the Fed funds futures prospects. It jumped from 30% yesterday to a 60% chance of a 50 basis point increase. Notice those columns have now shifted. So right now the expectations are for that March 22nd meeting, just a few weeks away, you are going to see a 50 basis point increase. It's actually 71% right now, where it was only 31 yesterday, and a month ago it was 9%. So things are leaning more towards a more aggressive stance by Jerome Powell. In my current article that I'm writing for Bar Chart, I look at some of the factors that are driving this decision, and it's kind of unfortunate that Jerome Powell spoke because it does steal a little bit of the thunder from my article, which is really all about the data, right? He was referencing the data, at least Jerome Powell was referencing the data, and that data looks pretty good. It shows the economy's not feeling any ill effects from those 4.5% increase in rates over the past 12 months. But I'll let you know when that article comes out. All right, last thing I want to get to what happens tomorrow. Actually, I believe, is it tomorrow? No, dag nabbit. I think I may have copied the wrong damn thing. Did I? No, I think this is right. So here's what we have for tomorrow. I have Italian retail sales. You also have a FOM rate statement coming out for Canada, which is expected to stay right where it's at 4.5%. You also have GDP numbers coming out for Japan, which I know some people are freaking out a little bit about what's going on with the Japanese yen. Let me go and show you the Japanese yen chart here, just so I can show you that one. All right, here's your USD JPY, which on the daily, we're back up to that yellow box and looks like just about to break through it. Part of the reason I think this market did what it did today was the Dixie itself. That dollar index was showing some nice strength, 1.26% gain. As I put there on Twitter, you had 9 days worth of sideways chop erased in one candle. This is serious momentum. This is all because of Jerome Powell's presentation or his comments. And notice right where we're at. This long topping tail from January 6th of 2023, the tail, high point of that thing was 105.63. Our high today, 105.65, and we close at 105.61. So we didn't break it, but we are right into that level. I think you're going to see this break and the market rally up on the dollar index to 107, which puts more downside pressure on the markets. As you can see here, nice reaction, follow through from that shooting star. I did go short this morning. I actually went short a couple different things, not right off the bat. I actually, the one that I really wanted, I missed. I was really, really irritated, but nice shooting star today. I'm still holding short my Qs. and that was a nice trade today. But look at that S&P 500 doing 1.55%. Beautiful, beautiful trade off that shooting star formation. Here, just for fun, I'm going to show you Aramark. This is one I had on my radar as having a really nice shooting star, and look at the pattern on this bad boy. I mean, it almost happened, and I don't like to trade the opening 5 minutes. I think it's just a little bit too crazy. But look what happened in the opening 5 minutes. I'll show you this just so you guys can see. Here is the open, and I'll get you the after hours taken away. Oops. It's right here. So right here is where we opened up, and you can see the tail shot up and actually would have triggered me, but I don't trade the opening 5 minutes. And if you go to the lows of yesterday, the tail just whipped up there, and after 5 minutes, it never looked back and just had basically a free fall all day. Totally irritated on this one because it was on my radar. If it stayed up another minute or two, I would have gone short this one and had a beautiful short trade on Aramark, but didn't get that one in my day's trade. All right, I got 3 minutes left, so Big Eb can't gloat that I'm going to go for an hour. We'll cut it here shortly. 3.58% slide for crude oil. Bring up that daily time frame so you can see what's going on there. Again, it looks just ugly. However, we're still inside the yellow box, so nothing to speak of there that's exciting. The real scary stuff today was gold and silver. Gold looked like it was bouncing up and then just came ripping back down, erasing 5-6 days worth of gains. If we get down below those lows, about 8.11, expect there to be some pretty big downside movement and maybe even close this gap that you saw going all the way back to November 30th of last year, which is right around 1760. Dow down 1.75%, still hanging in there in this box, but challenging that lower side again. Feels more bearish this time. I do believe you're going to start to see more lows here in the market, but that's just my belief. Apple, my favorite. I can't touch it, Lisa. Don't tease me like that. We had talked about S&P. Bitcoin, not looking very good. And, there's a lot of regulatory stuff coming out. Gary Gensler is just machine gunning Wells notices and going after a lot of firms right now, which is putting pressure on that crypto world, down 1.43% to 22,000. Second place, I guess it is second place. The NASDAQ, which had some nice follow through from that shooting star as well. I will get rid of this yellow box because I think that is now played out. We'll see if it comes back and challenges that 12,000 on the NASDAQ 100 futures. And the best performer was really here, down 1.18%. That's the Russell. And again, second day in a row, we've seen really negative moves to the Russell. Corey was talking about that kind of being the litmus test. That's the screaming, annoying child at Disneyland. And right now it's screaming, I want to get out of here. So this may be further drawdown for our equity markets. And just make sure you guys keep an eye on what Jerome Powell says. Now, I already went through those economic announcements, wrapped through most of our content here. So I am done. Tomorrow, we're going to have David Warner on the program. So we haven't talked about Forex in quite some time. Hopefully I'll get Tim Pessett on in the next couple weeks. But David Warner will be our guest tomorrow. If you have anything you want us to discuss with David, email me at TraderMerlin@gmail.com, and I'll get all those questions ready for him and myself, and maybe even some graphical support. If you want to see anything from Justin Krebs, you can go visit theproactiveinvestor.com. Again, I put that link in the chat earlier for you guys. So there you go. That's going to do it for today's show. Sneaking out of here just probably a few seconds before 1 hour. So neener, Big Ab. The rest of you guys, thank you so much for your participation. Hope you enjoyed and learned something today. I will see you all tomorrow. Take care.